Hey, and welcome to another episode of AT Banter.
Banter, banter.
Trigger warning, cowbell.
Do we have to do a trigger warning for that now?
Probably should.
I think we do. Yeah, we had a guest on a few weeks ago, and we startled them, so we felt bad. Yeah. So, I mean, which I can understand. I mean, really, if I was going on a podcast and all of a sudden I heard an air horn or something, I guess I would be startled too. So, we're trying it out. We're trying to. This is the warm and sensitive AT Banter. It's the new format. How are you enjoying it so far?
So far, it's been a very humanizing experience.
See, we should have trigger warning that, Ryan. See, now we got a trigger warning everything. We got a trigger warning. This is going to be a very humanizing experience. How are you guys today?
Oh, just splendiferous.
Yeah, excellent. Oh wait, hey, I meant to ask you guys because I haven't talked to you since Halloween, but just real quick before we get started with the show. But did you? Because generally Halloween is a big deal over at the Barclay residence. Did you guys do any sort of like Tunnel of Terror or anything for the kiddos this year?
We haven't done the Tunnel of Terror since COVID. When COVID came around, all of us, all of our neighbors and us, we moved out to the car park. We've got a covered parking area. So we gathered together all of our decorations and stuff, and we just decorated the heck out of it. And now that's become kind of a destination trick-or-treating spot because you can hit like 5 houses all in one very quick bit. And also because we've got a lot of animatronic stuff. People come to see the animatronic stuff. And one of the neighbor's kids, he's 25 now, he gets dressed up as a werewolf and he stands on top of it. And he'll sit there perfectly still for a while and people will look up and say, oh, look, there's a werewolf statue up there. And then he'll stand up and howl at them and freak them out. So it's pretty fun. But yeah, we had we were down a little this year. We only had 275 kids.
We had 17.
Wow. And that was during an atmospheric river because Halloween was terrible here this year.
Yeah, it was
a lot of rain.
Wet evening for sure.
Geez, that's crazy. Well, it's no wonder everyone shows up at your place. It sounds like it's always a good time. Good time terrorizing neighborhood children.
Indeed.
Scarring them from life.
Yeah. Oh, also we have my wife's brother making mulled wine and handing it out to parents, so that also brings them by.
Yeah, for sure. See, marketing 101.
Yep.
Just offer parents alcohol. We'll do it every time.
Bingo. Yep.
Yeah. We should get started with the show because I am very excited. Hey, Ryan.
Yeah, Rob.
What the heck are we doing today?
Today we are talking with some guests who have been hosting workshops to teach art, drawing, and creating SVG files for blind folks. From the New York Public Library, we have Chancey Fleet. Hello, Chancey.
Hi, good evening.
And joining us, mobile expert from Intuit, Marco Salsiccia. And I hope I pronounced that correct, Marco.
Oh, you nailed it. Good
Yay.
job.
Thank you so much to both of you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, well, listen, there are lots to talk about, but before we really dive into some of the meat of this, let's just give the audience a little bit of a bird's eye view of exactly what is BlindSVG.
Yeah. So really quickly, in a nutshell, BlindSVG is a website that anyone can go to learn how to hand code scalable vector graphics code. So sighted people who get to use Illustrator or Inkscape or any kind of vector drawing tool, they get to create their artwork visually. But those of us who are blind or low vision, those apps tend to be really inaccessible to us. So we've figured out how to basically hand code SVG to produce our own digital and tactile graphics. And BlindSVG came out of a little workshop that we had at the library, at Chancey's library, getting people into this coding. And originally it was a study guide that I wrote because a lot of the materials and resources out on the web were basically meant for sighted web developers. There was a lot of extraneous information that we didn't need. So I took it upon myself to go through it all, strip out all the stuff that we didn't need to know, and put together a whole website that walks anyone step by step through the entire process of going from knowing nothing about coding to rendering your own graphics ready for tactile output or digital use.
Sort of, let's talk a little bit about each of your backgrounds and how each of you sort of became involved in this work and what drew you personally to this specific topic of tactile graphic.
I have been at New York Public Library as a volunteer since 2010 and as staff since 2014. And I run a free and open technology coaching service for blind and low vision and print disabled folks. And in 2017, I started a tactile graphics lab called the Dimensions Project, where we have the equipment, the means of production, if you will, for blind and sighted people to come and make their own braille and their own graphics and 3D models. We only ever charge for paper or filament, so there's no impediment there. And we teach blind and sighted workflows, so there's no impediment there. So we've got plenty of educators coming in and museum and culture workers and individuals and families, especially as the word spreads more. But when I first started the lab and started to publicize the opportunity to create maps and graphics and diagrams, I was met with a couple of things. One of them, which was pretty humbling, was most blind people saying, well, what do I need that for? What would I make? What would I do? I had assumed that all this demand was just ready to go. But the truth is that most of us have lived in image poverty most of our lives as blind folks, unless we were sighted before or unless we had like really superstar advocate educators. We might get half a dozen graphs or graphics in a year if we're lucky. And so that doesn't lead a person to know really what graphics are good for. So I came to the technology aspect first, but then started to have to contend with what does it mean to understand graphics for the first time as an adult? What kind of graphics are compelling to people? And by the way, while we're doing all that, it became obvious to me that in order to understand graphics, it helps for someone to be able to draw and express. So we needed to teach not only graphic literacy, but drawing, which is how we wound up with this sort of sprawling network of things that are happening across BlindSVG, which is drawing with code, our tactile art teach-ins, which are totally computer-free, analog, low-tech, affordable, how to draw with this thing called a sensational blackboard, regular paper, regular pen, and other endeavors that we'll talk about. That so we're trying to approach graphic literacy from every angle at once, so that people can take advantage of the technologies that's there, but also really understand the basics.
And then my route into this whole, like everything that we're doing here, a little bit more of a different route. So I was actually born sighted, and I was in the animation and visual effects and special effects industry for about 14 years. I actually went to college for that, for computer animation and media arts. So hand-drawn animation, digital animation, lots of movies, TV, film, corporate videos. I was working a lot around different animation houses in and around the San Francisco Bay Area, all the way up until 2014, where I very suddenly lost all of my vision. And I didn't think that I would be able to return to the art realm again. So I kind of deleted all my software, put away my Wacom tablet, and started the whole transitionary phase of learning, learning basically how to be blind. So doing all my orientation mobility training, getting Braille instruction, learning all of my tech again. And throughout that time, I learned about accessibility and the importance of accessibility for using apps, websites, and devices, and started kind of learning a lot more about that field. And I got into that industry. So several years later, I actually met Chancey at the National Federation of the Blind Convention in New Orleans back in 2022, where she was giving a presentation about her lab and about all the tactile graphics work that she was doing in terms of the drawing, 3D printing, embossing, swell form printing, all of the different methods of tactile output. And she showed me the sensational blackboard, which was the tactile drawing surface. That we can talk about a little bit later, that appears in all of our teach-ins. Just with a basic piece of paper and a pen, she gave me the pen. I started playing with it. I was drawing lines, and then pretty soon I was drawing shapes, and pretty soon we were doing like bubble letters and interesting drawings. And then all the way up to some owl characters that I used to draw in college and animate in college. They appeared on the page because I was able to actually get back in touch with my art. Like all my skills were just coming back and muscle memory was coming back. Then she told me about scalable vector graphics and how some folks were trying to use that um, to create maps and data representation and things of that nature. And so I kind of took that and ran with it. And that's how we ended up with BlindSVG, where we ended up creating a study group at the Dimensions Lab, or the Andrew Haskell Braille and Talking Books Library out in New York. And now with our teachings and everything, I was able to kind of apply all of my previous kind of cited knowledge from the artistic world. And, it's been amazing getting to convey that to more and more blind and low vision folks at all of the teach-ins, coming up with curriculum to teach these skills to both kids and adults. And, now we find ourselves here, and it's been quite a journey.
Can you explain for the audience, those who may not be familiar with SVG in particular, and this notion of code being sort of translated into tactile graphics? Could you kind of explain what SVG is, and I mean how the code aspect ties into production of tactile graphics?
So imagine something that's a lot like HTML, but instead of defining text of different sizes and colors and links and headings and lists, you're defining lines and their widths and colors. You're defining shapes, polygons. You're layering things on top of one another. So it's a coding language that's probably about as difficult, for better or worse, as HTML. There's a lot of documentation out there, but the mainstream documentation is mostly geared toward people who want to make things for the web. SVG was intended to make images make sense on lots of different screen sizes. It wasn't intended originally for blind people to make things in hard copy, but we can't use graphical CAD, and we can use this because you can do it in a text editor. You can do it in Notepad or in TextEdit. So line by line, you are learning to write the syntax for lines and shapes and scale and put things on a coordinate plane. And then at the same time, you're learning spatial planning. You are learning to hold in your mind where you want those shapes and lines to be so that you can be precise enough to write the right code. So that's kind of where SVG kind of hangs together. Even though it's high tech, it's code, I always have a sensational blackboard and a regular piece of paper and a pen by my side to kind of sketch things out the analog way. And both of those skills that we are helping people develop kind of hang together so that you can lay out in your mind. I keep trying not to say visualize. You can spatialize the graphic that you want to make and then figure out how to plan it and code it.
Yeah. And it's not a procedural code like JavaScript or Python or anything like that. As Chancey said, it is just a markup language. It's XML. So just using any text editor, just very basic plain text file, you're writing your code, you're writing the syntax for the shapes, the position of the shapes, the strokes, the lines, the infill colors, textures, dashed lines, anything like that. And then you just save it out as a .svg file instead of a .txt file. And then when you've created a graphic, you just pop it open in any browser. So I'm a Mac user, so I pop it open in either Safari or Chrome. And then if you have the means of tactile output, for example, I happen to have a View Plus Delta embosser here. I just send it to it like a printer. So I open it up in Chrome or Safari, print it like I would print any other document, and it shows up in a tactile format coming right out of my embosser. And then I can just print it on basic paper, feel what I've created, and then go back and iterate over and over again until I get the graphics that I want. And then these very same files can also be printed out for a swell form machine for swell paper. And you can even make bas reliefs or use them as 3D extrusions for 3D printers or UV printers if you want to do even more advanced production. So it's, and all it is just a very basic text file that, as long as you have access to a text editor, are comfortable with your screen readers and text editing, anyone can do this.
So, Marco, my question really quickly is, I lost my sight later in life as well. And I had my hands on a Monarch and a Tactile bicycle, and I couldn't tell you it was a bicycle. Do you guys do any teaching or training on how to actually identify tactile graphics? Because it's not something that came naturally to me.
Yes. So we have things that are for folks in New York, and we also have recommendations for folks that are anywhere. So if you are in the New York area, you can come and print out graphics on demand, and someone will sit with you and go over things with you. We have the T3, which is a talking tactile tablet, and the elements of different images going from very simple to very complex will speak when you touch them, and then you can take little quizzes. There are all kinds of maps and diagrams and emoji and different front, side, and back views of things. That's a really fun way to learn. Um, and then wherever you are, there is a curriculum that we recommend. Our colleague Ting Su put it together. It is called Tactile Art and Design Adventures. If you Google that, you will find it. Ta-da! And that has lesson plans and materials lists and links to the expanded core curriculum. And so it's really geared for students and teachers, but the information is accessible to anybody. And I think it applies just as well to adults. So if you're looking for activities that will help you with your graphic literacy. Now, I think the number one way to improve your graphic literacy is to find a way to expose yourself to more graphics. So if you're somewhere where you can emboss things or get swell form, do that. If you can order tactile books, do that. If you can go to accessible art shows that might have things that are tactile or 3D, do it. There are a couple great repositories of graphics online. One of them is btactile.com. That's the letter B, tactile.com. And that has a more eclectic, artsy sort of selection of graphics. There's some Banksy murals there. The astrological symbols are there. And then there's some STEM stuff too. And then from APH, the Tactile Graphics Image Library, you sign up for a free account, and that's all your educational graphics. So if you need like a periodic table, if you need a map, I had some visitors from Tokyo yesterday, and I was able to pull up the flag of Japan.
Nice.
And the more of them you expose yourself to, the more you will notice and pick up. And it's not a zero-sum game of, oh, I can read graphics or I can't. You start from somewhere. That's a good place to start.
Right.
And you will be around people, the majority of the sighted world, who will be plenty willing to fill in your gaps and explain things that you might be missing. So just keep trying. And it's like Braille literacy. Spend 10 minutes a day on it. Find a way to do that, and you'll see your literacy really climb.
Yeah, especially with these tactile drawing surfaces. If you get your hands on one of those, or use, like a sill pad or a baking mat on a table with a paper and a pen, and just start drawing, even if it's just basic shapes to start, gradually and eventually you'll start be able to put more and more complex shapes together. And that really helps with the spatial reasoning. That helps accelerate your tactile literacy.
Yes, it does. I think a lot of us were raised with this thing where, art supplies would come out, and maybe the blind kid, if we're lucky, we get some clay. And the same thing happens at the team building, work meetings. If you're lucky, you get some alternative activity. But usually you get, your partner can help you draw that. Just tell them what you want to draw. Or maybe now's a great time for you to go read a book or go do anything else. And the messaging is, you shouldn't bother with this, and it's not for you. And by the way, nobody has a plan for you to do it, so please tune out now. And by the time most of us are adults, we've absorbed that pretty deeply. So one of my favorite things about the teach-ins and working at the library is that we'll be in a group of people, 20 or 30 people that are doing this for the first time, whether they're blind or low vision or sighted and working under learning shades. And I will tell you, a lot of people get hung up on their drawings not being perfect, or this idea that they're not going to look like typical sighted people drawings, which may or may not be true. But the thing that we've got to get through to people is that if you're expressing yourself and your creativity and you're connecting with yourself, and or if you're communicating a concept to another person, then you have succeeded, whatever the peculiarities of your drawing are. So just any place is a good place to start.
So stick houses, stick dogs, the things I'm
Start
used
there,
to.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Why not?
I mean,
I
I
need
run people through making hand turkeys. People love that.
nice. I need a tactile tablet, Steve.
We've got a braille doodle here for you.
That's true.
That's
Yeah.
actually a really
That's
great way
true.
to experiment with shapes. You can
Hmm.
do a lot with a braille doodle. For those that don't know, it's a magnet board, and you use this special pen to pop up and down these really tactile metal. They're kind of like, they feel like bearings.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun to play with.
When you're holding these workshops and you're introducing people to this, what do you find is the biggest part of the learning curve for people who are really new to this idea?
I think it's different from person to person, but one thing that we struggle with, and for some types of drawing it matters, and for some it doesn't, are the uniquely visual properties of perspective. So, like atmospheric blur, what does it mean that things are blurry at a distance? What is diminution of size? What does it mean that things are smaller at a distance? Why do things appear to converge? So, we have a whole bunch of audio and tactile hands on exercises that we go through with people to try to make those born visual concepts more tangible and more real to non-visual users. And I would say that's a place where I struggled the most, because most of us involved in this project um, didn't come up in arts and graphics. So I'm learning these things for the first time about 6 months before we started teaching them to others.
And I think the another thing is the emotional weight that this brings, you know, being open to something that you either weren't brought into when you were growing up, or, you know, something that you're reconnecting to later in life if you've lost vision and you used to, you know, just to kind of take art and design and drawing for granted. Being able to hold space and give people the grace that they need to be able to create again and get their thoughts in their head down onto the paper and not get frustrated, or, you know, kind of reconnect with themselves. That was one of the biggest things. Our colleague Danielle Montour really helped guide discussions through that at the first teach-in that we held. And I think that I found that really, really helps people sort of get on the same page with everything and not get bogged down worrying about how things are looking. They're just really able to open themselves up and get their creativity out there. So that was something really interesting that people had to kind of handle.
Right.
One of my favorite parts of this work is helping people, or I'm not usually helping, witnessing people find their why, like what are the graphics that matter to them. So for me, my husband and I designed a renovation of our house, and we were going back and forth verbally, and that was no good. And then we started working from a tactile floor plan, and I was able to draw ideas in response. That was one of my biggest connects to, like, yes, this will have meaning for my life. For some people, it's mindfulness and mental health. Our colleague Minha specializes in doing tactile coloring pages. For some folks, it's more diagrammatic stuff. Our colleague Kylie does a lot with origami, and he also does tactile diagrams for Legos. For some people, it's maps and transit that are really exciting. So just exposing oneself to the different types of graphics and trying to think about, like, which ones might be relevant to your daily life. Sometimes people will come in and use the swell form machine because they need to get a swell form of a potential tattoo before they make that commitment. And I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah, good thought. It must be really rewarding to be able to sort of witness people for the first time making these tactile graphics. Most people are raised being told that this art form is totally inaccessible to them.
It really is, especially at the National Federation of the Blind Convention here in the States. We've been holding a drop-in art room where we have multiple tables with a bunch of different artistic techniques set up. So tactile drawing, sculpture, origami, 3D puzzles, just general design discussions. And I taught tactile drawing for about 4.5 hours straight, with people just coming in, dropping down, sitting at this big table, getting a board, getting a piece of paper and a pen. And I can't tell you, like, the joy that just emanated from the tables. People come in, they're like, "Oh, what is this? I don't really know." And then I heard people saying, like, I haven't felt my name before, like people who are writing their names or doing signatures, or people who are remembering things from when they did have vision and they were drawing them. There's a lot of an emotional stuff that's happening there, and it is really rewarding.
So for folks that are listening at home and aren't going to run out and buy anything, we love the sensational blackboards. Our mentor, Ann Cunningham, who's a really renowned tactile art educator and artist, makes them. But the fundamental property of what they do, you can do with lots of different household items. So if you have a silicone placemat, that's the best thing. You can get one at like Walmart for $3 or so. A mouse pad will usually work. Cardboard in a pinch, a magazine, anything that has a little bit of give to it, but not too much. And you're going to put regular paper on top of it, and you're going to use a ballpoint pen, not a marker, not anything else, but a ballpoint pen. Or if you don't want to get ink on your hands and you're checking your drawings out, you're going to use a stylus. And if you find a surface like that and you draw with a little extra pressure, you'll feel with the hand that's not drawing your line coming up in real time. You can feel everything as you do it. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, I don't know if I want to get into this, I don't know if I want to even get any special equipment, you can test it out for yourself that it works. If you find just those couple of items around your house.
And don't be afraid to tear the paper. If you do,
That's right.
Don't draw as hard.
Hey, podcast listeners. Steve, president and owner of Canadian Assistive Technology here again. While we love connecting with you online and over the phone, sometimes there's no substitute for seeing things in person. That's why we're so excited about our storefront at Unit 106, 828 West 8th Avenue in Vancouver. Coming to our showroom is a great way to explore many of the assistive technology solutions we offer. We're proud to say it's the largest assistive technology showroom in Western Canada. You can get a first-hand look at our extensive product line and speak directly with our team, who are happy to answer your questions and help direct you to the right solution. We always want to ensure the device you choose is the right fit for you. So if you're in the Vancouver area or planning a visit, we encourage you to drop by our storefront. It's a fantastic opportunity to see how Canadian assistive technology can help you meet your needs. We look forward to seeing you there. Again, the address is Unit 106, 828 West 8th Avenue in Vancouver. And now, back to the show.
Well, yeah, and it's really interesting too, because whenever you hear the term accessible image, everybody thinks automatically alt text and screen readers and such, and people don't necessarily think of tactile graphics. And I know that in the past, tactile graphic production has been a little bit, cost prohibitive for people. It's these systems like Swell Touch printers and such haven't really been all that accessible, I don't think, to the consumer. Are you finding that's changing, or what's the landscape of that sort of looking like these days?
It's a really complex landscape. And I'm going to start with the hack that anyone can do if you have no budget and no stuff. This is not the best plan usually, but this is what we did during lockdown when no one had access to anyone's machines. If you have a sighted friend, colleague, family member, you can print something out in reverse as a mirror image, and then they can trace it and you can flip it, and that will create a tactile line. So whoever you are, wherever you are, if you have a printer and you can borrow 10 minutes of someone's time and you have a pen, you can get access to some kind of tactile representation. Going up from that cost, we start with 3D printers, and 3D printers have gotten fast enough these days that if you are looking for a relatively small, 5x7 image, you could get that done in an hour or two. 3D printer is going to be slower than other methods, but it's also going to be cheaper. The bamboo series we use at work is going to run you less than $500. Going up from that, as you mentioned, swell form and embossing is in the $1,500 and up and up and up range, which is why we think it's really important that libraries, community centers, and other nonprofit organizations think about having open labs and maker spaces. We don't want to be the only one. there are a lot of institutions that have this equipment, but it's usually on the wrong side of an institutional locked door. I can't tell you how many blind kids I've met who say, yeah, there is a swell form machine in my resource room and I'm not allowed to touch it.
So do you see part of that needing to change in order to really drive this forward as a new standard? Because I really see that we could really sort of change the mainstream graphic design and the representation in the art world if we can make some of this AT a little bit more mainstream.
Yes. I mean, and I think 3D printing is really exciting in that way because that's a mainstream technology that for some of our purposes, can work well to produce tactile graphics. Um, I think it's good that more of us in the community are sort of acting in concert across our specializations. I think there's 8 or 9 of us at this point that are involved with the traveling art room and the teach-ins, and even more folks have been involved in other things like BlindSVG, and just getting the word out so that we can build a network. And I think that is one important step. And the other one is for people who are even the least bit interested in tactile graphics to affirmatively ask your local blindness agency, your maker space, whatever place seems like a sensible place to maybe hold some equipment in common and have access. And if any library or makerspace or agency in your locality wants to figure out how to spin up a lab on any budget, we are more than happy to talk to them and refer them to other folks who use other types of equipment. There is an equipment list for every budget, and we would love for this to be more common.
And then speaking of like the aesthetics of what we're coming up with, the tactile aesthetics of graphics and what we're outputting as blind designers is generally going to be different than what is coming out for sighted people. And it's really interesting being on like kind of the bleeding edge of developing this tactile language. We kind of focus a lot on minimalism, making sure that things are large enough to be felt, making sure that we just kind of have about maybe 4 or 5 colors or textures in our graphics. And I remember when I started doing SVG artwork for the first time, at the time I didn't have an embosser, so I would kind of create a graphic and be all excited about it, and then give it over to Chancey to emboss, and then she would come back saying like, "Yeah, this is a mess," because I.
So he's talking about color to height. So
Yeah.
if you're familiar with the View Plus embossers, they have, is it 8 or 9 dot heights?
8 dot heights.
There's 8 dot heights. And 1 and 8 are very distinct from one another, but any 2 adjacent ones are a little less distinct. They can make a nice gradient, but when you're designing for tactile, you do want to limit the number of heights that you use. So we usually recommend 3 or less actually at the library when we do our training. And then of course, if you want more relief, like if you're looking for enough variation to make a Georgia O'Keeffe piece look good, that's when you might want to think about doing a deep relief with something like 3D printing.
Mm-hmm.
So we keep hearing a lot about Canva and of course AI.
Oh.
Yeah. How is that limiting or unlimiting the potential for us to create art?
I'm sure whatever I say is going to be different in 3 months or 6 months.
Exactly. Yep.
12 months ago, I would have said this is just a headache factory. I put in a prompt and I get something that I definitely didn't ask for, and it's just like, if I want absurdist art, like here it is, but nothing useful. I am now in like the alligator wrestling stage where if I sit with my AI of choice at our workplace, it's Gemini, I can wrestle a decent tactile graph with grid lines and bars and correct braille, but it will take me about 12 tries until I get there, and I'll get some very trippy other things on the way to that. And I think 6 months from now, it'll be different. What I want everyone to understand about the current situation is that it is a consequence of our data being under-resourced in the training sets. For the same reason that AI tends to underperform on understanding Braille, as it underperforms when it comes to understanding some world languages that are less widely spoken and that are less online. There simply isn't the mass of data to train these models on what quote unquote good or best practice tactile design is. So even if you specify guidelines, and even if your prompt is really solid, there just isn't enough like it in the training data to get good results as easily as sighted people are used to. But that is probably going to change over time.
Right.
Right.
And then my issue with people trying to use AI design tools like that is it kind of it adds a middleman into their creative process. Well, I understand, if you don't know how to code SVG, or if you don't, you just want to get something done quick, and you have the means of an AI to build it for you, then, you can use that to kind of learn some of the coding, or at least get some basic shapes and things out there. But if you put a middleman between what you want to do and the ability to create it, then I always feel that people are kind of disengaged from their own creation at that stage. They
Right.
just, I want to draw an owl, but if I tell AI to do that, I have to give give it a lot of different prompts, a lot of extra information, and I may still not get what I'm thinking of. Or if someone doesn't know what something looks like and they throw it at the AI just to try to get a basic image, maybe what does the Eiffel Tower look like? Uh, they may or may not get the right imagery.
Right.
They might not learn it correctly. So yeah, it's kind of for me, it's a little bit of a catch-22 when it comes to
I mean,
AI
it's an
generation.
exciting time to be trying it.
Mhm.
And if what
Yeah.
you want is simple enough, for example, somebody yesterday asked me for some tactile graph paper, and I didn't have the file on hand. So I prompted my way to making a dot gradient. I made the X and Y axes black so that they would be more raised than the others in the grid. I put a central circle for the intersection of the XY axes so that it would be really easy for beginners to find the middle. And I put a little star on top so that if people were passing their drawings from one person to the next after they filled their graph paper, they could keep it all oriented. And I did that just by what I like to call pseudocode. So I'm talking to the AI, but I am writing sentence by sentence what I want each item, which each attribute to be. And I'm not letting it use too much of its own discretion. I'm really specifying exactly what I want. Like dots will be half-inch apart, for
Right.
example. And it took me 3 tries, but I got a good result from that. And so I would say if you're interested in this subject, but you don't want to code, AI is worth trying. It's going to be frustrating sometimes, but you will get some results some of the time.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the trick is learning how to give it the correct prompts or accurate enough prompts to give you the end result you're looking for.
Yeah. Leave very, very little to assumption. The more you make it assume, the more chaos gets entered into the fray.
Right.
Yeah, Pat. Let me talk to you guys a little bit about the community itself, because I'm sure that the more people that you introduce to this, the more people that you bring in and get really excited about this, the bigger this community gets. Does, sort of open source coding and things play into all of this as well?
Well, BlindSVG is Marco's website, and that's just a reference that's available for anyone. And the SVG specification is a mainstream specification that's pretty well documented and well supported. Marco, you can speak to it's not open source, it's a spec. Do you
Yeah.
want to talk about how that works?
Yeah. It's just a specification that all browsers creators agree to and build into into the browser code itself to be able to render the SVG when people use it in their websites. So there's nothing really there in terms of open source. I believe that the version of SVG is kind of stuck on 1.1 or 2. It's been in development since the late 90s. But as it stands right now, and with what we have available in the SVG library and the versions right now, it suits building tactile graphics with it really, really well. So kind of waiting to see if there are going to be any updates to it, but at this stage, I don't think there will be.
And in terms of our community, we are a really organic group of folks with different specializations that have been working together quite a bit. So I started my piece in 2017 at NYPL. And then I think the beginning of our sort of community organizing really started when I went to the Colorado Convention of the National Federation of the Blind in 2022 and started talking with Ann Cunningham, our mentor, and Kai Lee to say, wouldn't it be nice for a few of us to just get together and talk about drawing techniques and really get our heads around things as educators? And Ann volunteered to teach us. So we decided to converge in Toronto in December 2022. And Anne walked us through her curriculum. We spent several days together. We also got to visit RNIB and sort of demo the blackboards. And we got to visit the North York Central Library and look at their global collection of tactile books, and really just got immersed as educators. And then for the following 2 years, we did teach-ins at NYPL, teaching the curriculum, the drawing curriculum that came from Anne. And most recently, we were sponsored by American Action Fund for Blind Children and Adults to do the same thing in Colorado, only this time as a train the trainer, teaching educators who wanted to kind of radiate it out and teach it to others. So you can get in touch with any one of us that are working on this project and sort of be looped into future events and teach-ins. And there's always absolutely room for more people that want to become contributors, and people are finding different ways to do that. So, for example, our colleague Ting Su developed the Tada curriculum, and she references some of the work that came from us, that came from Anne. Marco has BlindSVG. What else should we shout out in sort of the tactile art making community? You should check out accessorigami.com. Lindy Vandermeer is in South Africa doing textual descriptions of origami.
Yeah, OpenSCAD or OpenSCAD, of course, is an accessible means of creating CAD models or 3D printable models. Like you have a bunch of different tactile display companies that are coming out that are trying to work with us or are trying to get more blind designers in on them for the Monarch, for the dot pad, for the graffiti. Everyone's been building like their own tactile versions of being able to draw. Like the dot pad, for example, you draw on a Canvas app on the iPad and it immediately translates over to the dot pad, so you can put your other hand on it and feel what you're scribbling out, like just popping up with the Braille dot there. And one of the recent things that we did with Matt McCutcheon out in Minnesota, we call him Matt the Hat, because he created a 1-to-1 ratio top hat for Abraham Lincoln, and managed to accidentally, on purpose, created this method that produced Braille in a spiral that he 3D printed circling around the top hat, and it's the Gettysburg Address.
One long perfect spiral.
Which is now at Chancey's library. So if you're in New York, you can go check it out. Awesome. But recently at the ATNIC conference, like we met him, got to see the hat and everything, and he and I were working together on seeing how he can display CAD models or 3D models in Rhino 3D or potentially any other 3D apps, while having an Orbit graffiti plugged in as a secondary, a tactile display. And we managed to find a way to get 3D models to actually show on the display itself, like in a way that's understandable. It isn't too messy with all the wireframes and everything. We actually worked out a way to do it, and I'm really excited to move forwards with that.
Wow.
Dr. Abby Stengel at the Georgia Tech is trying to get us all kind of together under one umbrella of the Tactile Media Alliance. Steve Landau of Touch Graphics, he's the one that created the T3, which is really great for learning learning graphics, and working with Lindsay Angelino as a blind designer on his team.
The community effort has no name and no one organization. If you haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah.
So
So we need to have all of you on AT Banter, and we'll
Yeah.
form an alliance of some sort.
yes.
That'd be great.
No, but this sounds exciting. I mean, it sounds like this is a real groundswell of activity that's going on here, and it's almost like it's like this whole new medium that everybody can access.
The thing that's wild about it is it's not new at all. Like some things are new. 3D printing is new. Tactile graphics displays are new. But like the fundamental tools of doing spatial expression in a non-visual way, in a tactile way, have been around for hundreds of years. I mean, there were tactile maps during Louis Braille's time, but it just doesn't get evenly distributed. And there's not always the level of mentorship and access that there should be. I mean, we already know that there's a Braille literacy crisis. It's almost like another version of that, where it's just this thing that gets skipped. I learned this term yesterday from the people that were visiting from Japan. They said that they call it verbalism, which is the bias that leads you to want to make everything words as a response to blindness rather than keeping spatial things spatial. And I think it's a pedagogical thing, it's a community thing. And what I love about what's happening now is there are so many professionals and practitioners and now people that have learned with us that want to learn to teach, that have gotten excited and are all contributing their own specializations. And I think we're talking to each other and working together more and just amplifying some practices that when you look at what the practices are, they're not always expensive or hard, and they've been here all along.
What's held us back all of these years, and why are we seeing this sort of groundswell now?
I think because blind people need blind people or sighted folks who get it. And for most of us, for me, I thought I was a pretty bold blind person growing up. I did all right academically. I was interested in developing my skills, but I really absorbed this message that drawing was not for me. And there was no one around me to say anything any different. There's no big conspiracy. It just didn't happen. So I think creating opportunities for blind people to converge, whether that's with youth, with adults, we're a low incidence disability. There won't be anyone that happens to be sitting near us doing the same thing. We're not going to find this set of practices out by accident. We really have to make and engineer those opportunities for more people to get to know what's possible.
Yeah. And I think from the transitionary phase of folks who lose vision later in life, there's not as much there really isn't any introduction to this, while you're learning your tech, you're learning your Braille. I only happened to come across a tactile drawing surface at the Lighthouse for the Blind in San Francisco, probably in 2017 or 18. And I didn't know what it was. It was just in the store, and they didn't really know how to teach me how to use it. It was just there. So I tried it out, put the pen on the paper, started drawing, and tore straight through the paper, and was just like, yeah, that's no, this isn't working.
Yeah.
But if, now that we have more and more curriculum coming up for any TBIs to use for K through 12 students, that they'll be able to have more hands-on work with tactile graphics and creating it themselves. And I think just more, it just seems to be just sent out more and more to different folks and different resource centers that both teach from an early age or teach from a later age. Just more awareness, basically.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times we talk about education on this podcast. We just need to educate them more.
Yeah. Yep.
But you have to, especially with adults. And I've learned this the hard way, having been a tech educator for a long time. And I'm one of those obnoxious people that was born blind. So my newly blind patrons think that nothing was ever hard for me ever. And that I listen to everything at 800 words per minute. And that my guide dog just floats me past every obstacle in life. And
every sandwich on life. Yeah.
And it's also necessary for newly blind folks and folks that have been blind for a long time to really figure out how to work with each other. I think sometimes we're set up in opposition to one another, or there's a lot of judgment that goes across the groups. And we have so much that we can teach each other, particularly when it comes to art. Blind folks are going to have all the background on, tactile media. We have the Braille literacy. We have the context on how to explain things non-visually and how that works. And newly blind people have all of this information about the visual world of design and graphics. They know about perspective. They know about animation. And another thing that I really love about the community that we're building together is there is a lot of trust across those two groups and a lot of communication. And I think we get to learn a lot from each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you host any sort of public virtual events that people can join in if they want to attend, learn more about what you guys are doing?
Yes, we do. We have a tactile drawing workshop that meets every month. In November, I think it's going to be virtual. In December, it'll be in person, and then it'll go back to virtual again. That's coming up. And then if you check our library website, talkingbooks.nypl.org, and you go to the heading that says current newsletter, you can see our full lineup. And there will be new tactile media events posted every quarter.
And then on BlindSVG, I try to put a little aside at the top of the page if I'm going to be showing up anywhere, if we're going to be showing up anywhere at different events. Like I was recently at the Association of Science and Technology Centers conference in San Francisco, and recently at ATNEC out in New York City. So I try to kind of keep that updated as well when we have any kind of events coming up. But I definitely really enjoy teaching the virtual class for drawing.
And as we speak, we have a couple co-conspirators at the NFB convention in Minnesota. Last week, I think we had folks in Colorado. I was just in Alabama. So if you have a group in your locality and you think that you would like to do a workshop locally, get in touch with one of us and we will see if anyone is near you or could potentially facilitate something where you live.
Well, so anything else that you guys want to plug?
Remember our website, talkingbooks.nypl.org.
Perfect.
That's all I've got.
And blindsvg.com. That's Sierra Victor Golf.
Thanks so much for coming on and talking about this. I'm super excited now to see where all this leads.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us. This is great.
Love to have you back.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good night.
Wow. So very cool. Very cool. I did not, we've of course been in the assistive technology business for a long time. And I don't know, what's your sense, Steve? I mean, tactile graphics and, especially like swell touch printers and stuff like that. Have they ever really taken off in terms of like a lot of consumers picking them up, or has it been mainly in the education sector?
I'd say mainly in the education sector. That's where you see it used primarily. But this could be a good way to open it up. I was doing a little looking at SVG as we were going through the show, and you can actually do quite a lot with it. And the coding for it is not particularly hard, and there's lots of resources out there for it as well.
Yeah. It must be incredibly rewarding for these guys to be involved with people who sit down and try this thing and find out that it's not inaccessible at all. And the fact that this technology has been around for ages, I'm talking about, SVG in particular.
Yeah.
Just a graphics formats. We've discovered a way to use it so that it will make things accessible. So I don't know. I love it. I love it when things like that happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can also do animation with SVG too, which was something I wasn't aware of until just now.
I'd recommend people, if you're interested, go check out the links in the show notes. Of course, we'll have everything there. And there you go. Hey, Ryan.
What?
Where can people find us?
They can find us online at atbanter.com.
Hey, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Where can people find Canadian Assistive Technology?
Well, they can find Canadian Assistive Technology at www.canasstech.com. They can also find us on Facebook. They can find us on Instagram. And they can find us sometimes in our office at 828 West 8th Avenue in Vancouver, room 106.
And of course, they can find the AT Banter podcast on Facebook and what's that? What is that thing?
Mastodon.
Mastodon.
Still have to. I gotta get on Mastodon. I'm gonna put that on my to-do list.
There you go. Why don't you get Windows 11 working first?
Yeah, exactly. That and getting Windows 11 successfully onto a machine that I own. Anyways, let's get out of here. That is going to about do it for us this week. Big thanks, of course, to Chancey and Marco for joining us. And we will see everybody.
Hey, where can people send us their feedback, their comments, suggestions for shows?
Cowbell at atbanter.com. Wow, did we forget that?
We did.
That's what we get for ad-libbing.
You forgot a trigger warning.
Oh, that's right, too. See, it's all new. Yeah. Sorry, trigger warning. Rob can edit it.
That's right. Want to be getting hate mail.
No, well, at least we're getting mail.
Okay, that's good enough. I got enough. I can crib that Franken outro together.
This podcast has been brought to you by Canadian Assistive Technology, providing low vision and blindness solutions, as well as physical access solutions and augmentative communication aids across Canada. Find us online at www.canastech.com, or if you're in the Vancouver Lower Mainland, visit our storefront at number 106 828 West 8th Avenue in Vancouver. That's one block off Broadway at Willow. You can reach us by phone toll-free at 1-844-795-8324 or by email at sales@canastech.com.